that was it. So yeah, the usual issues of live video. I hope the annoying audio loop of playing everything twice is gone now. So Ghafoor Hussain says, I thought I was being contacted from outer space. I don't think so. Should sound normal now, so please give me some feedback. I'm always appreciating feedback of stuff that doesn't work because, yeah, that's kind of normal in live streaming. We will get better during the following episodes. So Cameron Brown is here, says hello, ARC FPV, and UAV Futures, Stu from, I think you're in Melbourne, right? Special guest here today. Yeah, big YouTuber and big contributor to the hobby. I'm glad you're here. So he says, audio's insane. We have about 5 layers. Yeah, I think it kind of built up. Sorry, all good now, says Darren Morris, personal friend of mine, has seen the chaos here in person. I'm glad you're on the show. Exorcism is complete, says Dizzy FPV. And Cameron Brown says, all good. Yeah, not fast enough, and Monty FPV in the chat room as well. Good to see you there. So, yeah, let's get straight into this, and let's talk about what do we need to know to get started in this hobby. So, to kind of, portray where we started off, I just was digging around my my drawers of retired quads, and I found this guy here, which is very similar to what we have built in the beginning of 2016 when not much was happening, and we kind of struggled to find the right components, small enough and light enough to FPV a micro quad. So this here, I know it's kind of getting blurry when I get closer to the camera, is a camera. You can still see the production date on here. It's October 2015, so it's a VA11 camera. I've put it up here on my little rotation table so you can see it a little closer. So this is one of, or maybe my very first FPV camera. No, we had a few before, but the first that was small and light enough to fit on a whoop. So, well, it wasn't called whoop at this point, but this is the VA 1100 camera. I think I paid 150 Aussie dollars just for the camera, another 150 for the quad, which has changed now, but the board is still the same. So what you see on there is the original Inductrix board. So it wasn't intended for FPVs, so I just soldered the camera onto the back of it. So that's how we started flying micro FPV around 2.5 years ago. And yeah, as I said in the beginning, things got a lot easier down the track. To start things off with some general advice, what I like to give on advice to everyone who's buying his first model is consider the dependencies. So the model you want to fly needs to connect to some sort of a video screen or video goggle or receiver, and it needs to connect to your transmitter. So I've bought many different RTF models over time, which means you get the quad and you get the transmitter with it. And I have, I think, 4 or 5 moving boxes full of transmitters now. And it was kind of a waste of money looking back. So first advice here, even though we're not going to talk about transmitters today, but consider the protocol that your model is using. And if you want to stay in this hobby for a little longer, then it makes sense to use a transmitter that will outlive your model. So when you buy the next model, you can still be using the same transmitter. So This model here, what you see on the screen, is running the DSM protocol, which is compatible to the Spectrum radios. So it sort of fits that bill, but yeah, we can talk later about it, how much sense it makes to use DSM these days. But that was the protocol that I've started because I had this thought in the beginning when I started flying FPV or flying multi-rotors in general. I want to have a protocol that grows with me and that I can use for a long time. At that point, that was DSM or DSMX, the protocol from Spectrum, Blade, Horizon Hobby. And yeah, I've been living and struggling with it for a couple of years. There might be better options now. We're going to talk about this later. But yes, just as some general advice, consider that you might want to use a transmitter that lasts and grows with you, and that obviously goes into the decision of your first model. So before we go into questions and feedback from our audience, just want to pass the mic around. Maybe Travis, if you want to have a couple of words first, what would you give a beginner for an advice if he starts out? What should he look out for? What model should he buy?
Well, I think the most important thing to start with is to identify where you're going to fly, because having the right model in the right place makes all the difference in the world for how positive your experience is going to be. You know, there are guys that live in predominantly windy parts of the country, and if they wanted to fly outside, a loop type craft isn't going to be the best option for them. If you're going to be flying inside, an 8.5 millimeter, kind of micro brush quad is not going to be a great option for you. So the best thing to do, and I think what took me the longest, was figuring out how to match the right craft to the right space. So indoors, you're looking at your 65 to 75 millimeter ducted crafts. Outside, when you get into 7 and 8.5 millimeter brush crafts, you're swinging a little bit bigger props. You don't necessarily need the prop guards outside because there's not much you're going to be running into, and they're going to cut through the wind and handle outside conditions a little bit better. If you happen to live on a couple acres and have a field, you may even want to look into something that covers a little bit more ground and fits the size of your space. So there's no one craft, I think, that's the right place to start. You just have to get something that matches your space. And that's the biggest lesson I learned. And depending on where I go to fly, to this day, I still try to match what I bring to that space. Monty, how about you?
Yeah, I agree. That was a tough thing to learn. It's like getting the right golf club when you're going golfing. So it took a while to learn that as well.
I'd say after that, starting with quality components or things that are not too complicated for you would be the next couple things to focus on. If you have to be honest with yourself about where your technical skill level is and what part of the hobby are you going to enjoy most? If you enjoy the technical side of stuff, if you enjoy learning, some of the more advanced things, and that's what's turned you on, then there's going to be certain things that are right for you. If you just want to be able to fly and you find the tech stuff a little bit overwhelming, don't dive into a complicated build and try to learn configurators and learn rates and learn filters and learn the advanced stuff, because there are things that fly fine right out of the box, and that may be the direction that you need to focus on. Another thing too, and a hard lesson for me, was I was always shopping the deals when I started. I knew it was going to be an expensive hobby to get into because I've been into RC for a long time, and I was shopping deals like crazy. And I bought a lot of junk, and the junk didn't perform well. And it's one of the things that drove me to seek help, is to figure out, why isn't this stuff working right? And I had cut every corner in the book, so at the end of the day, it just didn't perform. So looking for the guidance that's out there for what quality parts are. Buy from reputable vendors that stand behind their product, that communicate through their support channels, and that's going to go a long way to getting you in the air. Absolutely.
Yeah, thanks, guys. I think there was some very good point. Match the craft to the space that you're flying in. So if you want to have a big space, you need a bigger craft to cover more ground. But if you have a small space, if you want to fly indoors or in your backyard or in any other small space, then yeah, there's just no point in flying a large craft. You won't be able to open the throttle good enough to have some fun, and you will break things. That includes, your quad. You'll break the surroundings, and you might break yourself or other people. So the biggest challenge before we got into micros when flying a multi-rotor was not to chop off your finger or your nose in the process. So, we all have learned that you should not test your ESCs or something or program your flight controller with the props on. Every one of us who had this thing connected to the battery and to USB and then configured something, for example, reversed the throttle channel, and suddenly this thing went full throttle in your workshop. Yeah, we all have learned that that's not a good thing, and we probably all have seen those pictures of people having the typical cuts going up their arm, chopped off tops of fingers, or the scariest picture I think I've ever seen was someone had a couple of cuts in his nose, one right under the eye and one right over the eye, which means the copter just went up his face and chopped him up, a couple of stitches in his face, but his eyes were fine. So yeah, that's why even if you want to plan flying in a larger space, I still recommend starting slow, starting low, and start indoors flying with a micro. So for the last I think a year or so, when people asked me, so what's the cheapest way to get into FPV, I was recommending a eChine. Let me see which version exactly it was, but there's a version that had a little Lego man on top. Yeah, it's just called the eChine E11 block drone. So looks like this. It might be a little outdated. I bought those a while ago. I have these ready to fly quads, and I give them to kids and friends who want to get started with the hobby. This does not contain a FPV camera, but it contains everything else you need to start flying. And then if you want to fly FPV, the only thing you need to do is stick a little camera on top of it. So this one here is a slightly modified version of the eChine E11. So it comes with this blocks here on top, and you can print them out or just use some hot glue and stick a little FPV camera on top. So that is probably the cheapest way to enter the hobby, but you're bound to this little toy transmitter unless you get the only multi-protocol transmitter I'm aware of, one of the jumpers. You cannot fly this quad of any DSM or FR-Sky radio. However, the industry has moved on as well, and there is an alternative to the eChine and random camera combination, which still, as you see currently on the screen, would require some soldering. So the next suggestion I'm going to put up is this, what's it called? The Beta FPV Beta 65S Lite. So that is pretty much the same thing like the eChine E11. So it runs the same components on the board. So this is still running the Bayang protocol. So same implications apply that in regards to the transmitter you can use, but it comes with everything built up, so you can buy this thing as a BNF. And even if you buy it in parts, the main innovation on this thing is that the camera is plug and play. So there's a little 2-pole connector on the board and 2 little pins on the camera. You just stick it in and you don't have to do any soldering. And this flight controller also comes pre-flashed with a nice firmware. I'm sure Travis can say a lot more about that. But for the beginner, the only thing you need to know is you don't have to muck around with that. You can, if you want to, you can program this thing, although this is pretty difficult on this controller, I have to admit. I tried it myself, and without a Windows PC on Mac, I kind of struggled. I haven't spent the time yet to do it, but yeah, the good news is you don't need to. It flies very nice, very smooth out of the box, and yeah, they cost around $40 to $50. That includes the camera. So yeah, Travis, you want to say something about these integrated boards?
I'd have to second that. That's a great place to start. You know, most of the Betaflight crafts that are out there come flashed with defaults, and everybody who's getting into this hobby hears Betaflight left and right. I think that might be the right place to go. This craft is running the stock version of Silverware, which has been developed and tweaked and tuned with contributions from the entire Silverware community for well over a year and a half now, and all those advancements have filtered back into stock Silverware. It is a relatively tame setup that's on there. You're not going to be jumping out in your front yard and busting rolls and flips or anything like that, but you will learn to fly, and it will fly well. And it's an absolute win. It sports 7mm motors, which gives you the advantage of being able to get outside and cut some additional weather. They're extremely efficient, so you get some good flight times, a solid 3 to 5 minutes with a good quality battery. It's an absolute can't go wrong first craft. I believe they come in a kit. It potentially includes a set of goggles, includes a basic transmitter. Definitely, it's not. It's a step up from the sort of toy jelly beans we call them, but it's not a high-end transmitter. But it's something that will allow you to fly pretty well. So that's a win. On the advanced side of it, we're not really going to dive too much into that. But as Benedict was saying, this thing becomes a science project, and when you're done with it, if you want to go that route, the possibilities are limitless. Yeah, that's an excellent place to start. When I started with an 8.5mm, and I wasn't intent on flying inside too much. This is something that's going to handle a light breeze outside, and it's going to fly well inside. So that is some great advice right there. Probably one of the best places to start in the hobby.
Yeah, thanks, Trev. So, yeah, indeed, you pointed out one of the main differences to the original Whoop. And so for a year or two, we've been mostly flying the Whoops on 6x15mm motors, and that was good. But then we actually went back again. Sometimes things come and go, and we went back to the 7x16mm motors, which funny enough, have been the first motors I've ever been flying. The Hobby King Pocket Quad had 7x16mm motors stock, and at that point we didn't think much of it. But yeah, combined with a 31mm prop, these things have been proven to be very energy efficient. So that's why, as you said, Trev, you get some longer flight times out of it. Makes it a little heavier, but it compensates for that with more power, so you get more flight time and a little more momentum to fight the weather a little more. So, and while you've been talking about it, I think you've been talking about this transmitter. This is a Bayang transmitter that comes with some of the RTFs from Beta FPV, and yeah, it's really quite basic. But yeah, it supports the Bayang protocol, and it has a little bit bigger sticks, a little less deadband, a little more control, that this kind of peanut-sized controllers, and it doesn't cost much more. I think you can buy this controller by itself for like $10 or so. I'm not using it because I'm flying all these toy quads with my jumper radios, but yeah, we'll talk more about this, more about the radios in the next episode, which will be focusing on the next part of equipment you need, which is the transmitter. So yeah, the Beta 65S Lite was certainly a big step in the right direction, making things a lot easier. I was searching the internet up and down and pinging all the manufacturers to finally make it happen to remove the step of soldering, because even though it's just two little solder joints you need to make, in order to get there, yeah, you need to practice, you can buy some equipment and practice soldering a lot. And if you get it wrong and make a solder bridge across the pins of your main CPU on the board or something, it's hosed and you got to buy a new one. So for most people entering the hobby and never they haven't soldered before, soldering is like voodoo. How the heck can you make this work? If you've practiced a little bit, yeah, two little solder joints take you 30 seconds, but to get to that point can be a difficult journey. So that's why I'm quite happy that we finally have an option that doesn't require soldering. So at that point, guys, if you have any questions, come either into the Discord chat, which I've linked at the bottom down there on the info page, or just chat to us in the YouTube chat, which I'm now also able to get onto the screen. So I've seen a couple of questions in here. Ray says the Bolt Clash BO3 is a nice one. I was looking around here and I know I have one, but I didn't find it right now. That's the issue with a lot of micros. They're so small, they disappear in the cracks somewhere. But that's certainly one of my favorites as well, or actually one of my son's favorite, because it's one of the few whoop-sized quads that has a somewhat working altitude control. I haven't found any other transmitter that works on it. Maybe I just didn't explore the jumper protocols enough yet, but it comes with a little larger RTF controller, and all other microquads that I've tested who claim to have altitude hold, which means you don't have to use the throttle and it keeps its altitude stable, it all just doesn't work on them. So the most famous popular contender is the Inductrix FPV Plus, which has some altitude sensor, but yeah, it just doesn't work. It bobs up and down like 1 or 2 meters and just makes it very uncontrollable. But the Bolt Clash BO3 B-Whoop is a nice one for sure. Thanks, Ray, for throwing this one in here. Thanks, 111 says the most important question of the day is, where can I get this sweatshirt that you're wearing? Yeah, it's also back from the days, depicts a original tiny whoop, has one on the back as well. And yeah, it's you can get these in my shop. I might throw a link in the chat room whilst I'm handing the mic over to Trevor Monty. And yeah, there's a couple others as well. These all have been hand drawn, artwork for it, not this particular shirt, by members of the community. And I especially like to wear it in combination with an alien shirt. So it's kind of like the alien lives within the whoop. Yeah. What else is happening in the chat room? Gal Weston, RC Enthusiast, says, hi guys, I have a question. I have a micro quad ELF 2 that uses nylon modular pinions. I see you sell on your site, but mine is smaller with only 7 teeth. I can't find replacements anywhere. Yeah, that's a tough question. Sourcing pinions, I've spent many days of my life on that topic. You can get 7-tooth pinions. I have a link to that. I think it's from Over Sky. Send me a message at support@mmw.rocks and I'll dig out the link for you. Those are metal pinions. I haven't found any polymer pinions with 7 teeth. But yeah, that's one of the issues when you want to fix some ready-to-fly quads. Most manufacturers who provide RTFs, they're ready to fly for a brief period, but once they break, you have a hard time of fixing them because they don't supply any parts for it. So the quadcopter review comes in and says, "Hey brother, thanks for the answer. Yeah, I'll dig out the link to the merchandise page in a second." So let's have a quick look over here into the Discord chat. What's happening here? Let me scroll up a little bit. So I cannot scroll up. Am I at the top of the
It's just Travis Love in the Discord chat.
Okay, so you guys having some fun up there, that's good. So let me switch back to the Zoom meeting. So yeah, guys, anything you want to say at this point? And I'll go and look for a merch link.
Monty, where did you have your first successful FPV experience? What was the space like, and what were you flying?
Oh, I was inside my house, and I had an Inductrix FPV, the yellow one with the camera. And successful for me was just being able to hover. You know, when I started off, I would bounce all over. I'd hit the ceiling, hit the floor, hit the ceiling, hit the floor. And just when I got it to hover in one spot, I thought I was pretty accomplished. But, you know, talking about all the different parts, one of the things I wanted to say to people who are new, you're going to crash. I know a lot of times when I first started looking into this, I was watching a lot of videos and everybody flew amazing and it was crazy. And I wanted to do that. And when I started flying, I got so frustrated because I kept crashing. All those videos are polished. You don't see all the crashes that those guys have made and in all their learning. So you're going to crash, you're going to break stuff. That's just part of the hobby, and learning how to repair it is the other part of the hobby.
So you started on an Inductrix board, and that's a great example of something that comes pre-tuned. Like it's going to fly well. All you have to learn how it flies. But once you adapted to how it flies, you know, it does what it's supposed to do. You know?
Mm-hmm.
You had to solder your camera on. What was your experience with learning how to solder? Did you have any experience with that before this hobby, or?
No, and it was pretty interesting. It looked really ugly in the beginning, but the more soldering I did, the better I got at it. That's just another part of the hobby. I think that's what attracted me so much to this. It's, you know, we're building, we're flying, we're learning mechanics, we're learning physics, we're learning everything. It's not something you could just hop in and start doing and learn and master in 2 hours.
I'll let you share with everybody a huge difference that you recently made in my soldering. I've been soldering since I was 8 years old, and it's always looked horrible. I've always used cheap irons, and it was kind of like just the bigger hammer approach. You know, get it hotter, get bigger solder. I did a terrible. I mutilated everything that I soldered. And recently I got more into trying to do things on the component level, and my old approach of, you know, cheap irons and cheap solder wasn't cutting it. And I'll let you tell everybody what you forced me into that made all the difference in the world.
Yeah. I sent a tube of MG Chemicals Flex to Trav, and if anybody hasn't used Flex before, I suggest you try it. It makes soldering so much easier. You only need a little bit on the pad, and when you heat up the pad to put the solder on, it just makes the solder flow right to the pad, and it makes it shiny and beautiful, and it looks like jewelry. And I learned this from Charlie Stevenson. You know, he's done so much soldering. He passed this along, and you don't believe it until you do it, and it makes a world of difference.
I went from, you know, I mean, just mutilating motor wires and receiver wires, and I called it arc welding or tack welding, you know, because I was using these cheap irons that were so hot. You know, you literally just touch it for a split second and hope everything liquefies and solidifies in the right place. and I got myself a decent iron, and Monty sent me this flux, and next thing you know, I was swapping out MCU chips. I was actually swapping STM32s successfully. You know, and I thought there'd be a lot more to it than quality solder and quality flux, but it makes a huge difference. So if you're new out there and you're taking on a model um, that's going to involve some soldering, please, please, please get yourself some good quality solder and good quality flux, and it will change everything about that build for you.
Yeah, good point, guys. I've just, while I've been talking, put some of my flux paraphernalia onto the stream. You know, I'm putting on there. I notice it looks like some drug paraphernalia, some dirty syringes and other crap moving around there. So yeah, I've been using what you see on the screen now, the middle tube mainly. So flux comes in a lot of different shapes and containers. So there's pens like you see on the right now, and it comes as a tacky paste, and yeah, also probably in lots of other forms that I haven't seen yet. But yeah, I prefer the tacky stuff. So it's like a like a gel, like a wax, so that you can portion it just right. Take it with a little knife or something and put it exactly where you want it to. But the flux pen works as well. But yeah, it's important not to use too much of it. Just a little bit, and it changes the chemical reaction and makes it flow nice and easily. And yeah, I fully agree. This changes things a lot. However, what I've also learned down the path of doing this, there is flux in almost every roll of solder in the middle, so which is called core core solder. I don't know, but in most of them, it's in the middle there. So if you are soldering quick enough, then you don't need to add extra flux. But once you have mucking around on a solder die and it didn't work properly, then add some flux and the magic starts happening again. Yeah, however, you know, we're trying to get away from that, at least for the first experience of learning how to fly, etc. It makes total sense to learn soldering down the track because you can rescue so much other equipment that otherwise would be broken. But yeah, when you have stuff that's just plug and play, makes it so much easier. So the main application for soldering for me building microquads was soldering cameras, video transmitters, filters, and power sources together. And yeah, we are at the stage now where these things become less necessary because more and more manufacturers realize that they need to provide plug and play solutions, so it's easier for people.
I think one of the biggest advantages of the plug and plays, the bind and flies, isn't so much just the lack of soldering too. It's the fact that the weight, the right flying weight, has already been figured out for you. One of the things I know I struggled with, I didn't know for each type of micro, be it an 8.5 millimeter or a 7 millimeter or a whoop type craft, how much is it supposed to weigh? And so I started throwing stuff together, and they all ended up, you know, a little bit too heavy. And there were a lot of lessons that I had to learn kind of the hard way on how much something is supposed to weigh. And when you go with something like that Beta 65 Lite, it's done. I mean, it's all put together. It's the right weight, and it's going to perform well. When you take on assembling something component by component, you know, I hope you got a scale handy and you can check it as you go along, because it's real easy to get a couple grams too heavy and absolutely kill the performance.
Agreed.
That's right, weight is important. So just go a little over and things won't fly anymore. We all discovered this in the beginning, and yeah, that's certainly one of the main advantages if you have a kit put together that someone has already thought about this. you know, on the other side of the scale is if you're making it too light, it'll break. So it's been a long journey to find the right frames that are light enough to fly properly, but also heavy enough, strong enough to survive a couple of crashes. So by now we have some spare capacity available. So I've just put up on my little rotation board here one of my Halloween quads. So this little skull here, I haven't made this myself. I got this from my good old buddy Jesse Perkins. He came up with them somehow and sent me one. It's super light. It's only a gram or so, I think. And yeah, you can just tuck it onto your whoop to have some fun on Halloween. So every year I dig this thing out and fly through birthday parties because yeah, one of my son's friend his birthday is on the 30th, so he always makes a Halloween party. So I go there and fly around. If you go through the YouTube channel, 1 year minus 2 or 3 days ago, there is a video of this thing flying around the birthday party. So yeah, let's talk a little more about what people are asking about in the YouTube chat. So scroll up a little bit, or here are my last comments. So yeah, I posted I posted the support email address. So if you want to ask me any questions that I didn't answer in this stream, you can send them to support@mmw.rocks. If you want to have some merch, click this link. We have a lot of different shirts and sweatshirts and a couple of mugs and artwork, etc. that we have assembled over the time. If you have any cool artwork that you want to contribute, you're welcome to send it to me. And if I like it so much that I put up a shirt or anything else using your artwork, you get a free copy of the shirt, sweatshirt, or mug, whatever you prefer. So, yeah, here, Benedict doesn't crash. Yeah, as some of you might know, that's not true. I'm crashing a lot, but I'm also editing a lot. So, of course, lots of my videos don't show the crashes, even though I made a few crash compilations as well. And crashing is just part of it. If you don't crash, you're not going hard enough. And that's why I also like to build quads that can take crashes. And all the recent frames, especially those for the whoops, got a lot stronger, and they can literally take hundreds of crashes without any significant damage. So the quadcopter review says he melted down his Beta 65X flight controller and ESCs. Pin came out in a crash and it didn't go back in correctly. Too bad, just been talking about it. Beta FPV has been doing a good job in making them plug and play, but sometimes even the pins break, and then it's good if you can solder, but yeah, it's also kind of hard to get these pins off and get them back in.
Yeah, I think that's kind of what Monty was talking about. Stuff breaks. You crash and stuff breaks, and that's just part of the game. Don't fall too in love with anything you pick out. You're going to put it in the air to go beat the snot out of it, and it's not going to last. None of our stuff lasts. Not even the talking heads slamming YouTube videos. Their stuff doesn't last either. They're ripping through parts left and right. So Don't fall too in love with anything you've picked out. There's another comment here. Gafur Hussein asked about what battery to put in the Beta 65X. He looks like he's flying one of those too. Those are real popular right now. I would throw out that the Turnagene Nanotech 300 mAh is probably one of the best batteries for that with an XT30. If you can put an XT30 on there, that's going to perform really well. And those are the Beta 65 and the Beta 75 are plug and play crafts, and they fly really well. I think Beta FPV did an amazing job circulating a lot of those to the community to try to get everybody to participate in setting up a good PID tune for them. And so they come flying pretty well right out of the box. So the only warning I would give a beginner with one of those is you're going to need some room. You're going to be out in your front yard to fly that. So if you're up north and it's starting to get cold, you're going to get chilly going outside because they're fast. And they're going to be a little bit too fast for a garage or a living room or zooming around your house.
Yeah, just put them up. I have both of them, and yeah, I fully agree with you. They're very impressive little quads. They have a very nice tune in stock form. You don't need to muck around with the settings if you don't want to. And yes, they are very powerful for its size. You know, I think I probably had all the BNFs that Beta FPV makes. I started buying their frames and propellers a long time ago when they've just popped up on the scene and did their first products. And since then, they've been some of them sending them to me for free, and some of them I just purchased as soon as I have seen them popping up on their website. But over the time, I got tired of them. They didn't really perform that well as I was hoping, and it was usually also again back to buy and fiddle. But the last four they have sent me, they got really good. And yeah, the first BNF I was impressed with by them was the 65S Lite, and then after that they came out with the 65S, which contains a plug-and-play Betaflight board with a camera that connects over 5 pins, so um, you get OSD and S audio out of the box without configuration, without soldering, and yeah, same applies to those two little quads here currently rotating on screen. They come completely set up, and as you might be able to see if you peek under the hood there, there's a flight controller and the 4-in-1 ESC underneath, which also doesn't require soldering. They just click together with little pins, and they have plugs on the bottom for the brushless motors, and they have a little pin header on top to stick the camera in. Also does S audio, telemetry, OSD, all out of the box. They both run on 2S, and yeah, as Trev said, they're way too powerful to fly them indoors. Yeah, I didn't expect too much of them because all their previous 1S brushless quads were kind of a little tame. But yeah, took out this one, hovered this in my office here, punched the throttle, and this thing immediately crashed into the ceiling. It survived, and I got, wow, this is cool. This is changing the game now. So they cost around 130, the small one, I think, and 140 the larger one. They the smaller one, the 65X, is pretty much the exact same size as a Whoop, and they have this funny construction stock here, so you stick two batteries in there, two Whoop size stick batteries, and then you connect both of them, so it has like, and how do I show this best? Some contrast here. Connect two batteries in series, and then it runs on 2S. I haven't done it yet, but I mean, it kind of totally makes sense, and I've read the recommendation often. Just remove this funny plug here and add an XD30, and then you snip out the little pack here in the middle, and you can put a larger pack in there. But then, yeah, we're again back to buy and fiddle. I'm pretty sure that Beta FPV will pick this up and put an XD30 as an option on the next version of this thing. They have been one of the most responsive company to customer feedback, and as Trev said, this thing has been built based on a lot of community feedback, which, yeah, so far is pretty unique. I'm not saying that no other company is listening to their customers, but yeah, to me, Beta FPV is really leading the way here in the way they're reacting and also talking to the community. So having said this, that they're probably going to upgrade this thing in the future to an XD30, I really like that they've done this, because if you're already into whooping and if you have a lot of 1S stick packs, you can just get this and it works just fine on the regular stick packs. So I've been flying this thing a lot with two 255 milliamp high voltage MyLipo packs, the same that I'm using for all my 1S brush whoops, and yeah, it has some decent power, but yeah, it also is going through the batteries like Tic Tacs, so 2 at a time, and they only last a minute or a minute and a half if you're actually using the throttle. But yeah, some really nice BNF, and the first brushless whoop where I'm thinking, yeah, that kind of makes sense. You get a lot more power, and it actually makes sense to go through the little bit of extra complexity. So if you look at this thing, it has 3 boards in there. So a flight controller, a 4-in-1 ESC, and an external receiver. So I hope down the track, eventually, maybe in a year or so, we'll get to the point where we'll have this setup, but only one piece of electronics in there. So what we need, guys, better FPV, if you're listening, we need a flight controller with 4 integrated ESCs and an integrated receiver. The MOSFETs, obviously, on the ESCs need to be big enough that we don't smoke them again, which used to be a big problem in the first instances of most quads where we put larger motors on than required. But yeah, I guess you've learned this lesson already. So we need a solid, reliable, all-in-one board. And then if you want to take the next step, like Newbie Drone is already doing, you should also integrate the video transmitter on the board. So what we want is an all-in-one piece of electronic that we put on there, we connect motors, we connect battery, and then we want to go and fly FPV. So I'll put it back on here. So currently on rotation is the Beta 65X X for extreme. And for a whoop, it's pretty extreme. So let's have a look, guys. Did you pick up any interesting questions in one of the chat rooms in the meantime?
Yeah, there's some questions on what temperature to solder at, and some normalizing of the experience that beta flight is a constant learning struggle. I mean, every revision that comes out, we're all studying again. So if you're new and you feel like things are changing fast, like you just got a handle on it and it all changed, that's normal. Don't be discouraged by that. You don't have to learn everything that's presented out there. You don't have to become an expert on everything to fly. When you're starting out new and a new version of Betaflight comes out, or a new version of whatever firmware you're into comes out, you don't have to flash it right away. It's not going to be that much different than the last version. Just keep flying. The focus is on flying and on getting more comfortable behind the sticks. So I think there's a lot of experience to just be normalized for newcomers out there. Monty, what would you say? I know I've got some advice that's lingering in the back of my head. What advice would you give someone else that's new?
So if you have a Betaflight whoop, it's easy to get caught up in the hype of making changes and staying up to date with everything. Honestly, if you can get it up in the air and you can fly, just fly. Just learn to fly with the way it's set up, and you'll get used to it, and you'll have more fun than constantly tweaking it. I went through the tweaking stages, and man, it was driving me crazy. Like I'd make a change here, make a change there, and I couldn't really focus on my flying skills so much. Lately, I just leave it as is, and I fly, and I have a blast. Less tinkering for me works out better.
So I've got another question for you. How long? So you had your first successful flight. You were hovering in your living room, and it was a setup board and Inductrix board. How long was it in between that and when the bug bit you and you went out and started ordering massive amounts of parts and stockpiling things and creating all of these advanced builds. Did you jump into advanced builds before you were ready?
So I took a multi-prong approach. So I first saw drone racing on ESPN, and that was November of 2016, I think it was. And I spent the next 4 months researching, looking at, watching YouTube videos, trying to learn as much as I could. And then in January, I bought my transmitter, and I started buying parts for a mini quad. And I bought the right parts, but I realized, wow, is this going to be a big endeavor? I want to fly. So then I started seeing tiny whoops and the Inductrix, and that looks really easy right now. Let's just get one of those so I can focus on flying and then take my time learning how to build. So I kind of went two paths at the same time.
So, but you mentioned just 4 months of reading. So 4 months of reading before you purchased anything. So what I'm trying to do is kind of give people an idea of, and I'm using you as an example because a lot of guys take on the hobby and get discouraged, and guys like us are jumping in every day to encourage people and help keep them here. So just to kind of make everybody familiar with what a realistic time frame is, if you're out there and you're new and you've been reading for 3 months, there's guys out there that read for 4, and then started buying and then still took their time from that point. So this is a journey, and enjoy the journey, enjoy the scenery along the way, enjoy flying every craft that you fly as you work up to something. And judge yourself by your own expectations and the fun that you have, and not by YouTube videos or comments that people say or what everybody else is into. Find your own path with it and have some fun.
Agreed.
Yep. That's some wise words there, my friend. Don't focus so much on what other people are doing. Don't tweak and fiddle so much, but make sure you get some solid flight time and have some fun flying by yourself or with your friends. On that note, I want to give some special mentions for a couple of inhabitants in the various chat rooms. So what you currently see on the screen is a little quad that I've built with a Alien Whoop Zero, which has some nice innovations in the flight controller space that we haven't seen before. Zero means, I think it's part of the name is that it's sporting a F0 chip. And also when I've seen it out of the box, I said, yeah, Zero also kind of makes sense because it's smaller than any other board. It could have been even smaller, but it kind of stretches out to reach the four mounting points. But yeah, if you look into this, it has a couple of cutouts, and it's really a lot smaller than any other fully integrated flight controller. Actually, not fully integrated. It sports an FrSky external receiver underneath. So yeah, I wish it would have a receiver on board, but I'm sure we're getting there. But I'm mentioning this because I've seen in the chat room our good old friend, not in this one, but in the other, our good old friend Charlie Stevenson, going by the name of Cow Tix 777. That's a Zero on the turntable. You got it, my friend. Welcome to the show. Glad for your various contributions. So you're not making great flight controllers, but yeah, I know that you've also been helping a lot of people getting into the hobby, and also been a very important contributor to the whole we make our own FC community, and yeah, been around for a long time. So yeah, thanks for sticking around, my friend. And then another honorable mention to one of the influencers in this little niche of the internet. You can see him here with a little blue wrench here. That means he's still a moderator of the good old times. Our buddy Peter Newman, also known as Pedro147, who just as Charlie is a big contributor in the FC hacking space. And yeah, I don't remember when you joined the scene, Pedro, but it's been a long time. Fellow Aussie here, we met in person, I think 2 or 3 years ago when our friend Ash Rain invited us to whoop the Google offices in Sydney, Australia. So since then, you're sticking around, and you're also a big contributor and helping out new people and being the gatekeeper of the secret hacker FC hacker community. So I'm glad to see you again here, Pedro. And we work on that, getting you into the Discord chat as well. Someone's talking in the background. I think that's my echo. So yeah, we are reaching the top of the hour. So, and as I said, I want to exercise more discipline in sticking to the hour. We've been talking a lot about micro quads. What should you buy? What can you buy as a beginner? And what makes sense money budget and time budget wise? What do you need to know to buy a beginner quad? If you have any questions on this topic, if you are watching this recording post stream on YouTube, you're welcome to leave any comments below, and we will rotate topics on this show. So this is episode 1. Next 3 will have other topics, and then on episode 5, 6, or 7, we'll probably come back to microquads and the questions you post in post at the comment section of this video. We'll pick them up in some of the later episodes, or maybe even reply in the comment section down there. So if you who are watching this want to join us on the podium, there's lots more spaces. Currently you see only 2 talking heads next to mine up here, but there's another on the current subscription, another 98 spots free. Not sure if it makes sense to add so many people to the podium here, but if you have something to say, if you want to share your experience, if you want to help me answering questions and covering the topic of FPV for beginners, then you're most welcome. Come along, send me a message on the various platforms, and then I'm more than happy to chuck you up here on the screen as well. So let's wrap it up, guys. See if there's any significant questions that we can use to close the loop here. Otherwise, yeah, get ready for the rest of the day. Here in Australia, it's currently the morning, so I have the whole week in front of me. For most of you guys, it's probably the end of the week, Sunday night, or maybe even already Monday morning. So bringing up the YouTube chat, we see here, Darren Morris says, thanks guys, well done. Yeah, Darren, you know, if you want to be a live guest, a physical guest in here, I have a free chair for you here. Thanks said you have changed everything in this amazing world of whoops. No, if you mean me, no. There's been lots of people who helped me with that. I've just added a little bit. I merely see me as a connector. I'm sure you don't mean me, right? I ain't Charlie. You're not Charlie? You are Charlie, right? I'm getting confused. Yeah, sorry for everyone who I'm not recognizing or calling the wrong name. There's so many people here and so many different names on different platforms. I'm known for getting it wrong, and even for recognizing you, I'm probably butchering your name and pronouncing it strangely. Thanks for the love. Appreciate every one of you being here. Quick last look into the chat room on Discord. The cam mount, yeah, if you want to have the cam mount that I've shown just on the screen, this has been printed by my friends at Phaser FPV. It's printed off TPU, and you don't need to have any glue to stick your camera onto the flight controller. It's removable. So if you're interested in those, send me a message. I have a whole bag of them. I didn't bother to put them up on the shop yet, but if you're interested in those, they are indeed sweet. So, I've been mistaken for Charlie. I'm confused, guys, but yeah, we'll figure it out down the track. Revolving 0 on the center stage. I think I'm gonna leave this as the outro. Jens, in the video meeting, you want to have some final words?
I'd just like to thank everybody for joining us and hanging out, having some fun, asking a few questions. If anything comes up, we're pretty easy people to find in the community. Track us down and ask a question. The only dumb question is the one that you don't ask. So by all means, hit us up on Discord or Micromotor community, or track us down on Facebook and make it easy to have a good time. Seek out the support of your community. We're here to stand behind you and help you get in the air and have some fun. So thanks for joining us.
Agree, guys. If you have any questions, don't hesitate to reach out. That's why this community is so great. Everybody helps.
Yeah, very good. Thanks a lot for that, guys. And that's it for the show today. Yeah, reach out if you want to sit on the podium. Reach out as well. And if you have any questions left, just post them in any of the various channels, and we get this all a little more organized in the future. This was episode 1 of, I think, a lot more to come. So note this time of the day, whatever it is for you. We'll make this every week until something really important happens. But if I can do it every week, I'd be very happy about that, because yeah, this has not only provided me with a chance to reach out and give advice to new people, but this has always been one of my main channels to get input for myself and then have new content that I can put out to the community. So thanks to Monty, thanks to Trav for hanging out here for today. See you in the next one.
Thank you.
Later.